4th and goal. And they're going to snap it, and it's Trey Burton who throws, caught. Foles, touchdown.
Hey, welcome to the United Youth Podcast. My name is Pastor Nate Ritchie, and I am joined by a very special guest, Super Bowl winning tight end Trey Burton. How you doing, Trey?
I'm doing well, my brother. How are you?
Great, man. Thank you so much for taking time out of your week to invest some knowledge into our youth. Man, it means a lot to us. I know that.
Of course, bro. Whatever you need, I'm here for you. You know that.
Thanks, man. Hey, so obviously I know who you are. I'm a big football fan, followed you throughout your career. I'm a Colts fan. You played for the Colts for a little bit. But there's a chance that, even if people do know who you are when it comes to, showing up on their TV on Sundays, they might not know the full version, the full story of who Trey Burton is. And so I just want to give you the opportunity to just share, your testimony, your story, even your football journey, so that it gives us a picture into who Trey Burton is.
Yeah. I'll give you the quick version of it. There's a lot that goes into that, but I'm from a city called Nokomis, Florida. No one knows where that is, so I tell them Sarasota, Florida. Usually people know where Sarasota is, beaches, old people, all of the above. So Sarasota, Florida, then go south of Sarasota is Venice, or I guess really it's Nokomis, and then it's Venice. So I went to Venice High School. Down there is probably an hour 15, from where we are here in Tampa. Grew up with two younger brothers, and just my mom. My dad left when I was really young. I think when I was like 2 or 3 weeks old is the story that I was told. So we bounced around from, Nokomis, Venice, Bradenton, those areas a couple times with just my brothers and my mom. But so grew up down there, really quiet beach town, not much going on. I think Venice is tied, or maybe they might have beaten Naples with the average age of residents that live there. And I want to say it was like 64 years old. So everything was done at, 9:30 at night. There wasn't much, action or anything like that going on. Every restaurant and store and that type of stuff were out of business at nighttime. And also one cool fact about Nokomis is all the gas stations, even like Publix has signs on the front windows when I was growing up, no shoes, no shirt, Nokomis. And so I literally grew up with no shirt, like literally going to Publix, no shirt on, no shoes on, barefoot. And it didn't really haunt me until I got to college, and I was walking in the college hallways of the locker room, and my coach was like, "Bro, you're gonna get staffed, man. You got to put at least some flip flops on or something like that." So, that was basically where we grew up, our upbringing. Really cool, quiet beach town, nothing crazy. Like I said, two younger brothers, a single parent mom or a single parent home, and I was really fortunate. Going into the testimony of things, like I was really fortunate that I felt like from a really young age, God had marked my brothers and I. And I know we're talking about me, specifically. So God marked me specifically in the sense of like there was always some, Christian father figure, some man in my life, growing up that I could lean on and lean into. My mom would always make sure. We would go to church. My grandparents served in church for their whole entire life. Like my grandfather would go door to door with a school bus and pick kids up to take them to Sunday school. My grandma would always play the piano on Sundays. So we grew up, in the church world. I ended up going to a Christian school from preschool all the way up to 5th grade. So, we were around the church and the word a lot, which was really cool. Actually committed my life to Christ when I was in kindergarten. Miss Korecki was my teacher, and I remember her saying, like, does anybody want to pray to accept Jesus into the heart? And everybody's heads down, on the table, and just put your hand up. And I remember I put my hand up, and she took me out to like the courtyard, and we prayed, and I accepted Christ, from a really early age. But like with my story, I'm sure, a lot of people have very similar stories. Like I didn't really start walking with the Lord until I got to college. And like until it became something that I had to choose on my own, like I said, my grandfather was a really big father figure. I had a guy in high school. His name was Rodney Ring. He was the head of Athletes in Action or Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I forgot which one. I think he actually still runs the whole Tampa to Naples area. He's like the director of it. He did an awesome job. But him and I would go every Wednesday during the school year, and he would take me to breakfast right outside of the diner, right outside of the high school, and he would sew into me about like what does it mean to be a believer, How do you walk out this life? What are you supposed to believe? What are you supposed to do? Those type of things. So I was really fortunate to have a guy like him. And that was after my grandpa died. So I had my grandpa, and then I had Rodney, and then I get to college, and I had to start making my own decisions. No one's forcing me to go to church. No one's forcing you to go to the Bible study. No one's forcing you to read the word. That you don't know anybody, up there. So it's kind of like a free for all and all that. And so, yeah, I got involved with Athletes in Action up there for a little bit. I was kind of like 1 foot living the college life and 1 foot trying to, stay connected to the Lord, through Bible studies and that type of stuff. And so, was walking the line for a while. And then my junior year in college, I had a girlfriend for probably like 2 years. And my junior year in college, I go to my girlfriend's house like one afternoon, and she's bawling, crying. And I'm like, what the heck happened? Like, we're not fighting, and everything should be good. And she hands me a pregnancy test. And she says, I'm pregnant. And I was like, oh shoot, what are we gonna do now? And I already knew, like, we had already been taking the steps to we weren't doing marriage counseling yet, but we were already taking the steps to get married early on. I knew we wanted to have kids early. We knew we wanted to get married. We knew like that was my wife, and I was going to be her husband. And so, not that makes it any better, but that's the situation we were in at the time. And I remember, like, she's crying, she's handing this to me, and I can only imagine all the thoughts that are going through her mind. I mean, because I had a ton of thoughts and emotions going through my mind. And we're probably sitting there for like 10, 15 minutes, and I look at it and I'm like, hey, listen, this isn't the way that the Lord intended it to be, but what can we do now? How can we make this work where we're at now? And so we basically both just got on our knees. We committed ourselves in our relationship to the Lord, again, at that time together. A couple months later, we ended up both getting baptized. And then, we were kind of, I don't want to say smooth sailing, but we were kind of rocking and rolling, from then on out. So that's kind of my like early years testimony.
No, yeah, and I want to lean in there for a second because I think you said a few just key things that our students can learn from. One, I love that you talk about how you weren't necessarily following down the path that God had for you until you really got to college, later on in college. But you can look back and you can see the people that planted seeds in your life, and you can see like God's faithfulness even when you weren't following after what He had for you. You could see God's faithfulness on your life, and you look back and you can say, man, this person, my kindergarten teacher, had such an impact on me. Somebody who leads an FCA had such an impact on me. And so it's like you look back and you're like, man, even when we're not faithful, God is, and He's got such a phenomenal plan for all of our students' lives and in your life as well. And then you talk about how you're dating your girlfriend and you guys get pregnant, and you make the statement, and you're like, yeah, you know what, that's not how God intended it to be. But man, what are we going to do now? And I think that just speaks to God's redemptive love on our life. And goes back to the fact that, man, even when we're not faithful, God is. And so it's like God can take something that might not have been, us following after His plan and redeem it for good. And that's just who God is. He's a miracle worker. And so, man, I think your story is super powerful. And for a lot of students that, aren't growing up with their dad in their life, I think they can look up to you and see somebody who's like, man, you still had, Christian male father figures in your life that were investing into your life. And I would say for students that are listening that, might not have that figure, then man, there's men out there that are available that want to invest into you. And man, you'd have a perfect heavenly Father who can set that relationship and show you what that looks like. But jumping back into your story, so you play ball at UF. And you came after your years were right after Tim Tebow's years, right?
Yeah, when Tebow and all those guys left and they played their last game in 2009, I think it was like maybe December 30th, 2009. I was on campus to like the 2nd of January. So I graduated high school early to go up to college.
Wow.
And so they were all gone, and I was coming in that time.
That's wild. So what was the swamp like, playing in the swamp, after those years? Obviously the very successful years when Tebow led those years.
There's nothing like the swamp, at any level of football. And I played in every professional football stadium except for the Rams, the new Rams and Chargers one. And so I can say that there's literally nothing anywhere close to it. I remember my first time walking into the swamp. It was for a quarterback camp, maybe my sophomore or junior year of high school, and it was like a summer camp, so I was going there for the whole entire week. And I remember walking into the swamp and walking on the grass, and I immediately called my mom, and I was like, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. It's too like grand. You know, I might even have been in tears. You know, I don't remember exactly, but I remember calling her like, "This is not possible. It's just too crazy." You know, but it's funny to see. You know, 4, 5, 6 years later, that that's where I played 4 years college football
and played well. I mean,
It's fun.
I'm sorry for not being a Florida Gator fan. I'll start with that.
It's okay.
But after scheduling this, I was like, I'm gonna go see like how he did in college, and I was like, oh wow, he was a very successful college football player.
We had a couple good years for sure. It hurt me when Urban left. Urban left after my freshman year. He recruited me, and then he left, and to go to Ohio State, or he took like a leave of absence or whatever. And then Muschamp came in, and like what a lot of people don't realize is that when a new guy comes in, he is not responsible for the old guys. You know, like he wants to get his own dudes in there, because if he's going to fall on the sword, he's going to fall on the sword for his dude instead of somebody else's guy. So it's a really hard transition, from that standpoint, to like go into this and meet this head coach who is your head coach, and that he didn't recruit you, nor would he have recruited you. And so like, how do you make it work? It's kind of weird, from that standpoint.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Tim Tebow, so I when I was in high school and even early college years, people would all the time tell me, "Hey, you kind of look like Tim Tebow to me," and you think that's a compliment, but they always followed it up by saying, "Hey, you look like Tim Tebow." Well, at least your face does. At least. As if you need to specify what part of me might actually look like Tim Tebow. It's unfortunately not my biceps, but every time I'm like, oh, thank you. Actually, no, not thank you. That's an insult. But I just thought I had to share that with you. But you played college football, Division I, Florida Gators, and then you got drafted, correct, in the NFL draft?
So I was undrafted.
Oh, you were undrafted?
The whole all 7 rounds went by, and then I was undrafted and ended up signing with Philadelphia for 4 years, and then I ended up going to Chicago for 2, and then played in Indy for 1.
Nice. And then something that I'm sure, man, you probably runs through your head on a weekly basis is that Super Bowl performance, and you got to be a part of one of the greatest plays in Super Bowl history with that trick play. For those, we'll probably throw the clip on there for the podcast for the students that might not remember what that looked like. But before we jump into even some more of the deeper content, man, tell us about that play.
And they're going to snap it, and it's Trey Burton who throws, caught, Foles, touchdown.
This play call has a chance to be remembered as one of the all-time greats, just going for it.
Yeah, it was something that so in this when you play in the Super Bowl, I guess I'll start with the playoffs. When you play in the playoffs, the first round of playoffs, the number 1 seed gets a bye week. So we were the number 1 seed. Might be number 1 and number 2, but back then it was number 1 gets a bye week. And then you got to go, conference, and then you go to divisional, and then you go to the Super Bowl. So you got to win a couple games to get to the Super Bowl. And so during our bye week, our coaches from the offensive side of the ball got together and said, "Hey, I want every single coach to pull a trick play that you like and send it to the offense coordinator, and the offense coordinator will sort through it and pick out which ones he ends up liking." And so at the time, I want to say, so he's now the offensive coordinator in Jacksonville. His name's Press Taylor, but I think he was like quality control GA quarterbacks coach, so he really had no say in any like the on the field performance stuff, but he was going through film on some trick plays and found one which ended up being the one that we called. And so we put it in early on in the playoffs, and I'm thinking, I know that I'm a big part of the play, and I know that he can call it in this situation. I had to be inside the 5-yard line on the left hash, and I had this personnel in there, so I knew all this stuff. So every week going into the game, I'm sitting there when we're in the red zone, like sitting right next to coach, like, "Hey, go ahead and just call this thing. Let's get this thing running. Let's roll." And every week, like, "No, we're gonna save it. We're gonna save it. We're gonna save it." So that third game, which was the Super Bowl, I had no clue. Like, I wasn't even paying attention. It must have been like I like the prior weeks, I'm sitting there like, "Hey, let's do this," But the Super Bowl, I must have just losing my mind, because of the stage. And I just remember like my coach like looking at me, my tight end coach like looking at me like with wide eyes, and he's like, "All right, you're in." And so we ended up making it work, and it was a lot of fun, especially that we won.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. So obviously and God has gifted you. God has gifted you with athleticism. And I think that's phenomenal. And I really think when we look at like God's giftings, like God has, I believe, gifted everybody with specific and unique skills and gifts to really for their good, but also more importantly for God's glory, to give it back to God and say, God, what you have given me, I'm going to give back to you and glorify your name with what you've given me. But it's also on us to grow that gift, to invest into that gift, to not just let that gift sit, but also use and then grow that gift. Man, what does that look like for you with your gift of athleticism, with your gift, your calling to even play football? What did that look like? What type of hard work did it take to even get to the level that you got to?
And you're talking about football, or you're talking about the gifts?
I'm talking about football. Talking about football.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, one of the things that I got parents and kids telling me all the time that I want to play in college or I want to play in high school, or some guys saying I want to play in the NFL,
Yeah.
and it's like you can tell the same people the same exact thing I'm about to say right now, in the sense of like everybody works out, especially high school football. Everybody has summer workouts, right? Now the intensity of the summer workouts in high school might differ. Same thing with college. You have summer workouts. Florida is going to have a different intensity than like Central Michigan or like a smaller Division I school, right? They're still Division I, but they're both still doing summer workouts. But the thing that like puts people and sets teams apart aren't the summer workouts, because everybody does them. And like I said, it doesn't matter the intensity. What sets everybody apart is like, what extra are you doing on top of the summer workout stuff? And so like I ask people all the time, okay, yeah, you're working out, an hour and a half and you're running sprints and lifting weights, but the guy that's going to play the position, or you're going to fight for that position, is probably doing the same thing, And like I said, the intensity might not be the same, or the resources might not be the same, but he's doing the same thing. What else are we doing, to put ourselves or give ourselves the edge? And so I've always had that mindset, and I've always been like, I wasn't highly recruited or highly rated in high school. I committed to Florida super early, so that kind of affected my rating system. And I didn't do the camps that you need to do to get ratings and that type of stuff. But I wasn't, highly sought after in the draft, or else I would have got drafted. I wasn't highly recruited, like I said, with that. So that was always like my underdog mindset, is like, how can I be doing more? What can I be doing more? I was a big, like I forced my coaches to come in high school on Saturday morning and just open up the gym. You don't got to be there, bro. Like, I'm going to do my own stuff. Just open the gym up so I can have the chance to, do this stuff. I would always be the last one on the field, throwing extra routes with the guys, making sure our timing's on point, working on my arm strength, working on accuracy, like those things. And those things they pass the test of time. Guys before me did that. Guys after me will do that. But one thing's consistent is guys that do that have a better chance at, making it to the next level, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. And I love that you share that, because I think there's so many, whether it's athletic gifts, speaking gifts, whatever it is, like art, like gifts of art, whatever it is. I mean, people have been gifted by God with something. And I always ask the question, are you using your gift, or are you abusing your gift? Because so many people abuse their gift, in the sense of like the only time they pick it up is when they have to. But the people that are using their gift and investing into their gift, those are the people that are gonna do something great. Like, God's got a great plan for you, but it's on you to be obedient and faithful and use and grow what God has given you.
And bro, it's so funny. Like, I don't mean to interrupt you, but like,
No,
it's funny
good.
for me because I have kids. I have 3 younger kids now. And like, if someone, for the kids that are listening, if someone is speaking a gift or speaking it into you, or telling you have this gift, like, bro, that you have it, and like, let's explore that. Like, I know for my kids, I tell my daughter can sing. I'm like, babe, just go sing, go spend the time, go to this class or go do this. And she doesn't want to do it. And I'm like, you are so talented. Like, I'm not going to sit here and let you just waste this, gift. Like, there's a purpose, there's a reason why you have this. Like, so I'm speaking to all the kids out there. And then I know it might be annoying that your mom or dad might say this, and you're like, no, Johnny, you're so good at this. And Johnny doesn't want to do that. Well, like, listen, you're speaking this gift, into you, and like, you have it, they see it in you. Like, let's work on it.
No, I think that's great. Hey, so we are jumping into the series in October called Counterculture, and the heart of the series is, man, how do you live in the world, but not be of the world. Because, we're all called to, be where God has called us to be, whether it's our school, whether it's our sports team, whatever it is, like God's placed us in a position for a reason. But he also has called us to a higher standard and not to basically fall into temptation. You at a high level when it comes to college and the temptation that comes with college, or even when it comes to the professional level, what does that look like for you in the sense of like, man, how were you in these environments? And how did you basically stand strong the times that you did choose to stand strong for God?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. And I love how you preface it in the sense of like everybody has their own unique way, in doing it. It's like my way might not work for other ways or other people. And other people might have better ways than I have. Like that's just facts of it. But like I think one of the ways, especially when we were rolling, and the spirit was freaking rolling in Philadelphia, like it was on fire, especially in our locker room and then, obviously outside as well.
Yeah.
The number one way that the spirit was able to work was because we were all so close and we were all so accountable to each other. And so like if anything did happen, there'd be a guy reach out and like it's now on me. So say you and I are having a conversation, you call me, say you're struggling with something. Now it's on me, to help you. Like I have to take whole heart in that, like, oh no, it's not Nate's problem. And forget about him. Like we took such serious accountability and we loved each other so much that like we knew if someone was reaching out about something that like it was legit and true. And so that was one of the ways we were able to stay on track. Also, like for me, it was always great to have someone I could walk with and know that was on my team, someone I could open up to. And like if I needed to go have dinner, like he dropped everything he would do and we'd have dinner, so we like took it real serious. I know like it's easy to say like accountability partner and this and that, but like it was kind of like life and death, for us a lot of times in those areas. And then also like I'm a big, like, I love the book of James. I call it the book of flames. I know the book of Revelations is technically, I guess, called the book of flames, but I love just the heat that comes out of James,
Yeah.
and it's just like super straightforward and blunt, which is exactly how I am. And it talks
Yeah.
about like temptation in the first book of James, and it's not God tempting us, it's our own earthly and fleshly desires. And whenever we act on those, then it becomes sin. And so like knowing what your temptations are, is really big, and knowing that like it's not God tempting me, it's actually Satan, no matter how it's wrapped in the bow.
Yeah.
And to try to flee that and try to just make sure you're aware of what those situations are or what those things may be, and not
Yeah.
go down that path.
No, I think that's so good because you talked about two different things. You talk about accountability, and it's great to have, because at the end of the day, you're surrounded by people that might not have the same values as you and might not want the same things, but you're also around people that did want the same things for you. And so you were able to easily decipher who's who. And it's not that you cut your life away from those that have different values, because at the end of the day, you are called to be an influence to them as well. But when it comes down to it, it's so much easier to follow after what God has for us. Man, when we're spending time with people that, man, have the okay to call us out, right? Because I think that's such a big thing. Is like, man, I hear it all the time, Pastor Nate. Like, I'm surrounded by my teammates, and my teammates are just talking about this and saying this and doing this. Well, there's a really good chance that the way that you feel right now, of like you feeling uncomfortable, but you feel like you have to give into those things because everybody else is. There's a good chance somebody else is feeling the same exact way that you are. And so when you decide to take a stand and say, hey guys, that's just not who I am, there's going to be somebody that's going to follow and say, yeah, you know what, you're right. I'm not like that either. And so I think that's such a great encouragement. From a professional level, you saw it, but even in the high school level, it's like, it's the same way. It's like the professional locker room, the high school locker room. It's like, there's guys that, yes, they want the fame, they want the glory, they want the money, they want the girls, they want all of that. But there's also those people that's like, man, they know that God has a calling on their life and they want to follow after it. It's standing bold and showing somebody what that looks like, so that they also have the courage to do so and come alongside you and to find that accountability. And then the other thing that you talked about, man, when it comes to knowing truth. I think that's what it comes down to, is like you knew the book of James, you knew your Bible, and so to be able to have a firm foundation to stand on is so great to go back to, because at the end of the day, you can call out what a lie is from the enemy, you can call out what temptation is, because you know what God has for you and what God says and what he calls you to do. And so I think there's such a wisdom in knowing, like, man, I need to open up the book of life. I need to know what this says, so that, because God's trying to not keep me from having fun, but God's trying to give me a hope and a future, because he knows what's going to hurt me and he knows what's going to help me. And so if I know what his word says, I'm going to build my life on it, because his plan is so much greater than what the world is trying to tempt me with.
Yeah, no question, man. You hit it on the head.
Yeah, so I do. I think that's great. So I do want to jump into this because, man, life sometimes sucks. Like, that's just the way that it is. Sometimes it doesn't go the way that we want it to go. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes things happen. And I know through your career, there's been some just ups and downs, some injuries that you've been through, some things that might not have just gone your way. Man, how do you keep your head up during those seasons?
Well, I mean, shoot, now it's easy. Well, it's never easy. Let me take that back. It's a lot easier now because of all what I have gone through. You know what I mean? Like, from upbringing, no dad, all the stuff I dealt with then, and then, you know, the coaching changes in Florida were big for me. Like, it really hurt, you know, me as an athlete, and then going on and getting hurt physically in the NFL, and, you know, those type of things. Like, that's kind of how my, you know, career ended. So but the cool thing about all of those things is, like, those, like, shaped me into who I am today. Like, it sucked during the time, but it was kind of like a purifying deal that, like, you know, maybe I was putting too much emphasis in the football, and football was becoming an idol, you know, and it's amazing to see, like, God be able to take it away like that and kind of, like, refocus and reshape my thoughts. I'll never forget one of my first times getting injured in the NFL. And like I said, I wasn't a drafted guy. So if you're not drafted, you're very easily disposable. You know, like, they don't have much money tied into you. So, like, they can get rid of you at a whim if they want to, and they could, you know, bring somebody else in the next day. And so, like, I was so, one of the first times I got injured in Philly, I was freaking out, man. Like, cause I'm like, man, are they going to keep me? Like, am I going to be gone? Like, I'm going to have to go to a different team. I had two kids at the time, like, moving, all that stuff sucks. You know, there's nothing fun about that. And, I remember my wife, like, looking me dead in the eyes, because I'm, you know, spouting off at her, like, all the negative things that could happen. And she, like, looks at me in my eyes and she said, "What if we're not just here for football?"
Wow.
And I was like, shoot. Like, kind of brought me back to earth, you know, like, brought me back to, like, a good perspective on the way things are. So, like, yeah, those times suck, but going through those times, I have learned so much about myself. Good and bad, you know, honestly, a lot more probably bad than actual good. And, but it really helped me to remember that, like, maybe this situation isn't necessarily about me. You know, it's about somebody that I'm able to come in contact with. Maybe I'm in the training room with a guy who's a non-believer for a couple of weeks because I can't be on the field. He can't be on the field. And this is the only time he's ever going to hear about the Lord, you know, like, am I cool with that? You gotta be, you know, like, so instead of, like, looking negatively and thinking about all the bad things that could possibly happen, which, I mean, those bad things happen often and they suck, you know, but down the line and years from then, the situation, like, I've learned a lot, and there's been some really positive things come out of those, you know, situations.
Yeah, that's awesome, because it's the change of perspective, right? It's the understanding that, yeah, God's plan is so much bigger than what we can imagine. And so I think there's times where God tries to teach us something in the quiet before he allows us to go through something that we see as a trial or a tough time. But I think during those trials, during those tough times, that's when, man, God teaches us a lot, and use the word refining. And I think that's exactly what it is. He's refining to create a stronger follower of Christ, probably a stronger husband, a stronger father. Man, I think through the trials, the tribulations, the hard times, man, God just does so much in our lives. I mean, that's for my life as well. It's like, I remember 2020, my grandfather passed away from a car accident. And those are one of those times where you're like, God, I don't get it. I just don't. I just don't get it. And you know, a few months later, because of COVID, it pushed the funeral back. a few months later, I was able to actually officiate his a funeral. I was able to perform his funeral, and did a gospel presentation at the end. And my cousin, my grandpa's grandson, gave his life to Christ at my grandfather's funeral. And I know my grandfather, and I know it because he said it before, is like, he would give his life for his grandsons to know Jesus. And it's like, well, that's exactly what happened. And so I think understanding, zooming back and thinking, yeah, you know what? There's no other way of putting it. Right now, it sucks. Like right now where I'm at, it really does. But I know the God that I serve, and I know that he can take bad situations and turn it for good. And I believe that's what he's going to do with this situation. Hey man, as we close this out, the last thing I want to do is I just want to give you an opportunity. Like, man, what advice would you give, maybe yourself when you were a teenager, or somebody who's listening to this, watching this? What advice would you give?
Oh man, one of the things that always stood with me, and this is, try to track with me here. So growing up in a fatherless home, my grandmother gave me a book that was basically like a fatherless journey, and I don't remember what the book said except for the last page, and it gave the statistics on the odds for a fatherless child to be successful or to fail, the amount of people in jail who are grew up in a fatherless home, amount of people who are addicts, the bad things, and the good things, and the odds of good happening over bad, which obviously were very, very slim. And the last line in the book was said, "Don't just be another statistic, no matter what." And like, I'll never forget that. Like, I never wanted to be just another statistic. So like, regardless of your upbringing, regardless of what happens at home, like good or bad, because it could be the opposite way. Like everything could be great. You could live in a great home with great parents and end up screwing up later on down the road, but the odds are smaller or slimmer on that, but there's still odds, And so like, don't be another statistic, no matter what situation you're in. And then the other thing I'll never forget, another thing in high school, our head volleyball coach is probably one of the best high school volleyball coaches in the state of Florida, and in the history of the state of Florida. Like, he's an unbelievable dude, great Christian man. But I'll never forget him pulling me aside, probably like my sophomore or junior year, when I started to get some recognition and some popularity just because of playing ball. And he would always say, like, he'd pull me aside in the morning. He said, like, don't waste your talent and make it, and let it just be talent. Like, what are you going to do for the kingdom of God? And at the time, I had no clue. I was like, bro, I don't know. Like, I was, following the Lord, but I wasn't, all in, like I kind of told you in the testimony. And like, looking back at that, like, I wasted such an opportunity, and so many opportunities, to speak life into people, and to, hypothetically bring people to the Lord, through that, by doing things I wanted to do that had no gospel purpose, just being a kid. Like, it's so easy to get caught up in just being a kid, at those ages. So I guess, I don't know if either one of those makes sense, but it's kind of, for me, like, that's kind of like, don't be a statistic, and then don't just waste my talent as a talent,
No, I think it's great. Statistics, like, they tell a part of the story, but yeah, it's like, you still get to decide, your outcome. You still get
you don't have to go down those roads. You don't have to go to jail if you're a fatherless son or a daughter. Like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do drugs, so don't just do those and be those statistics because you can.
Yeah. And then, I think the other thing is, like, it's like, listen, like, when you're a kid, when you're a teen, like, there are things that, like, you want to have fun, but there's also something like, man, God has a greater purpose for your life, and he has something for you right here, right now. So it's like, man, have fun, but it doesn't have to be what this world calls fun. Like, God's got a life that is not just fun, but it's also fulfilling. And so to chase after what God has for you and find true satisfaction in his love for you, I think it's greater than anything else that we can find with what this world is offering.
Yeah, I agree.
So cool, man. Well, thank you so much again. I want to be, I want to end this so that you can get back to your family and all the stuff that you have to do. I could talk literally for hours. You can ask my wife. You can ask the teenagers in my student ministry. They know I could talk. But seriously, thank you so much for taking this time.
Yeah, brother. Anytime. Sorry, my wife's dog going crazy. Apologize. Anytime, man. Anytime you need anything, give me a shout.
You're good. Yep, for sure. See you, Trey.